So how does that look to you guys?
Like command line.
Yeah.
And it's the font is big enough and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see if I make it a little wider, still okay. How's that?
Good.
Awesome.
Yep.
Okay, good. We don't know of anyone else who's interested, right?
I think West Coast, and they weren't going to get up at 7 o'clock in the morning, so that's why I'm recording it.
Oh, okay. Good. So I'm guessing that you are Ed.
Yeah.
Hi, Ed. I don't know if we've met in person, have we?
No, I haven't been able to make it to any of the hack docs yet.
Okay. I didn't. Occasionally I lose track, but I didn't think I had met you. Well, I'm Kevin, and it's nice to talk to you. So, did you guys get the link to the sheet, like the walkthrough sheet?
Yeah.
Good. I'm kind of just going to walk through it and then like explain what's happening as we go through. And then this is basically a sheet that you could use to do your own experimenting or testing at some point, or use for reference. And again, the basic thing that I think we can try to accomplish in this session is using Drift on mitre to install an old LAE 3.2, intentionally an old one because we're going to then make some changes to it, add a submodule, some, a plugin, hack core a little bit, and then we're going to push that back as an institutional branch, spin up another one on Drift, using Drift on mitre again, do a little bit of back and forth between two installations, updating one, pushing those changes to the other. And then we'll do an upgrade so that you can see how that works. And at the end, then I'll show you how to tear everything down. If you're actually putting your institutional branch on there, you don't have to do the tear it down step. If you're just testing, then you might want to tear some things down. And that's what I think we can look forward to accomplishing today. Do you know, not that we can resolve it here if you don't, but do you know if you all have the ability to SSH to mitre?
I don't have the password yet, I don't think.
Okay. So Daniel Landau would be the person who can help you if you don't have that kind of account. But basically the first, I'll just show you, you can watch what's going on, and later when you have access, you can try it again yourself. But basically mitre is a server that Clamp runs. It actually currently lives at Reed, but it's going to be moved to the Amazon cloud. And there's some tools on there that we're going to take advantage of now. And at the Hack Doc, Jedediah and Christy and I had also talked about how you could use mitre as sort of your institutional repository. I want to say, if you're thinking of doing that, that shouldn't be your only copy ever. You're going to see in the process of what I'm doing here that all the branches are kind of exposed to each other, and somebody could make a mistake that would affect your branch. So you don't want to have your only branch of record, your only repository of record be the one that's on mitre. On the other hand, because of the way Git works, if you had like a test machine and your production machine, those should be complete repositories too. That's how Git works. But even still, you might want to have something like Bitbucket or GitHub or GitLab that you're using for your institutional stuff. So if you SSH into mitre, which I've already done, you can see in my shell prompt, it's Wiliarty at mitre. And if I do a present working directory pwd, you can see I'm in home Wiliarty. Then you can just type the drift command, and it'll show you what the options are. So drift, and then you can select a branch name. These would be like major branches of Moodle core and LAE Moodle. We'll see more about that in a minute. You can select a tag name. Those are specific releases along a branch. So Moodle 3.2, for example, is a branch, but then there's the dot releases that come out, and those get tagged. And that's how you can pick a specific version, specific release to install. The repository, you could theoretically use this tool to install a Moodle version from anywhere, but by default, it's going to use the mirror of Moodle that we have on mitre. Provision is a flag that you can use to set up the LDAP accounts for everybody in CLAMP. Unit tests would be if you wanted to run PHP unit tests. The SCOTUS is the Supreme Court justices as test users. It would add that in automatically. Submodules is something that we'll come back to later. We will actually be talking about that. And then instance name. So that looks like a lot of stuff, but really you can simplify it quite a lot. And as our first test, we're going to use a simpler command. But before we do that, we need to figure out which tag we want to use. We're going to use the tag name to install a specific version of the LAE. There's different ways you could find this out, but I'm going to go to home git Moodle. This is a directory on mitre, and it is where, this is like the main repository on mitre. If I look at the files here, you'll see it doesn't actually contain what you would think of as a Moodle installation. You don't see the config files, you don't see the mod directory, all the files that you normally see. This is what it's called a bare repository. So it has all of the information that you need to make clones, but it doesn't have its own representation of the files. Even so, when we're in there, we can issue a command like git tag. And first I'll just issue git tag, and you'll see it shows you a whole big long list of all the tagged versions in our repository. Since I know that I'm looking for some version of 3.2, I'm going to type git tag, and then I'm going to pipe that command to grep, which is like a filter, and I'm just going to filter on v3.2. So this should show me all the tags that are any kind of Moodle 3.2. And that just makes it a little bit easier to process what we're looking at. So things like v3.2.0, that's a Moodle core release. 3.2.1, 3.2.2, 3.2.3, those are the Moodle core releases. What we do, Charles and I, we integrate the LAE code with the core releases, and we then tag them in our own way. So v3.2.1, LAE 12.0.0. And we have our own version numbers because we might have two releases of our own that correspond to one Moodle release, or we might skip a Moodle release. So we can't have them be like tracking the Moodle versions. It makes it a little bit confusing, but this is what it means. It's version 3.2.1 of Moodle, and it's LAE 12.0.0. And then you'll see there's two tags because there's two different releases. The base release has no plugins. The bare, the one without base, the non-specified one, the unmarked tag, like 3.2.1, LAE 12.0.0, that has the plugins that CLAMP includes, like the filtered course list, CLAMP mail, and so on. Now, if you're going to manage your own plugins using Git, then I would recommend you don't start with the plugins included, because the way that that gets done, it's not easy for you to manually change those. If you're doing things with Git, and my idea is, if you're interested in this talk, then you probably are interested in using the base. The base release just has the core hacks that Clamp provides, and it doesn't have any of the modules. So you will have to include them yourself, like the filtered course list and so on, through a process that we're going to talk about here. It gives you more control about which version of that plugin you're using and so on. So let me just copy from my terminal v321 LAE12 00-base. Okay, so I pressed copy there. I'm going to go back to my home directory, and I'm going to look at the drift commands again, and I'm going to type drift and tag equals, and then I'm going to put in that tag I just copied, and I'm going to ignore everything else except the instance name, and I'm going to call this institution as like a substitute for what the institution would be, like, you know, Wells, Beloit, Center, whatever it is. And I'm going to call it LAE because it's the LAE, and 3.2. And this is actually sort of the convention in this shared repository on mitre. That's the convention we want people to use for their branches. If you make an institutional branch, this isn't exactly the branch yet. This is just the name of my instance. That could be anything, but it's helpful if you make the instance name and the branch name that you intend to use. If you make the match, then you can see right away when you look at your folders what you've got. So now when I press return, it's going to build Moodle for us. That'll take a minute or two, and we're doing it live, so we're just going to have to wait. But while that's happening, I'm going to warn you about one of the things that can go wrong very easily in this process. When you name your instance, you cannot use spaces or hyphens or anything. And the hyphens in particular might be surprising. You can use alphanumerics, you know, letters or numbers, and underscores. And that's all, because what's happening is it's creating a directory, it's creating a database, and MySQL will not use a hyphen in a database name. So it'll fail, and we don't have a good error about why. So try to remember, and I put a note in here in the gotcha, no hyphens, no spaces in your instance names. So I don't know if any of you have done a command line installation before. What you see passing along on the screen is a lot like what you'd have in the web view when you do an upgrade or an installation, and it's showing you all the success things. This is the command line version of that. That's building the tables in the database. Do you guys have any questions while this is finishing up so far? Good so far?
Quick question.
Yeah.
Where is this instance being built? Is it in the directory you created, the institution _LAE _32?
It will always be created. Actually, I should be able to trigger it from anywhere.
Okay.
It will always be created in a directory in your home called Moodles.
Okay.
And we'll go into that in just a second.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Absolutely. It looks like we're all done. And if I do the directory listing, you can see I've got Moodles and Moodle data directories in there, because it's got to set up a data directory too. So that's where it puts the data directories. And if I go into the Moodles directory and I do a listing, you can see I have a number of things in there. These are installations that I use for the integration process, but also at the very top, institution underscore LAE underscore 32. And if I go into that and do the file listing, you'll see this has got now like a big long file, a list of files and folders that you would expect. These are the Moodle files and folders. This is your application. Okay, so we also want to look at this on the web, and I realize now that I haven't shared my, let's see, is there a way I can share my whole desktop with you or something? Let me just stop the share for a second and try and share it a different way. Hi, Carly.
Hi, how are you?
Good. So I'm going to share my whole desktop, and that way I can also show you my browser. So any of the can you see my desktop now? Yeah? Hello?
Yes.
Yep, okay.
Yep, you can.
So when you make an installation, it will be accessible via the web by going to dev.clamp-it.org/tilde-username. Okay, this is going to show you, once I go through the authentication, this shows you the contents of my Moodle's directory, right? So when I did the file listing here, yeah, this directory, the institution LAE32, a bunch of LAEs, master, that's the same, right, as what's in the terminal then. And I can go into the one I just built, institution LAE-32, and pretty much everything will be set up, ready to go, with one exception. It doesn't pre-populate the admin's email address. So when I first go in there, I'll have to do that. This uses the standard password, which I put a link to the page on Redmine that has all the documentation about how to use Drift and includes things about what the password is. It's in there, and if you don't have access to that, let us know. So that's what the password is. And you can see once I sign in, I still have to put in my email address, and I'm going to put in my own. Not that it matters too much, and save that admin account. Okay, so now we've got a working Moodle, and in particular, we've got the LAE version, an early LAE version of 3.2. In fact, if we want to examine what we've got, then I'm going to use a command that we're going to see over and over again. I'm going to type git log one line color graph decorate. It's a long command, and I'll show you a trick in a second how we can make our lives easier. But first, let's look at what this does. So it shows us a kind of branching structure about all the different commits that have gone in, one line per commit. At the beginning of each line is part of the hash that you can use to uniquely identify a specific commit. And it also shows you things like where the head is, meaning like which commit we've currently got loaded. And we can see that the head is at the tag that we wanted. 321, LAE 12, etc. And it's the base branch. When you do this git log command to navigate, you can use J, the J key, to scroll down and look at more. K scrolls up, and I've put these notes in there. If you wanted to search for something like you're looking for commit messages that start with email or that have email in them, then you can use /, type the thing you want to search for, and press return, and it'll start highlighting them. There's other things you can do, and you can Google those things to find out what they are. To get out of this log view, you just press Q. So I'm going to get out of it. And then before I do anything else, because I use this command all the time for real. This is like how I confirm almost every step that I make with Git repo. So I want to be able to type this much faster than that long command. So I'm going to set up a git alias. And again, I've got the details of this command in there, but I'm going to set up an alias for myself. And this will live beyond specific sessions, and it will apply to all of my repositories. And I call this clogged. It's the initials of the parts of the command. It's color, log, one line, graph, decorate. And I put them in that order because it made something I could pronounce, which makes it easier for me to remember. And what it equals is log, one line, color, graph, decorate. Oops. Okay. So now if I type git clogged, it should run that for me. Okay. Cool. So let's move on to the next part, which is to make some customizations, right? So before I make changes, I'm still on the official LAE version of Moodle. I'm going to check out a new branch. The command to do that is git checkout with a B flag to check out a new branch. And I'm going to call the branch institution underscore LAE underscore 32. Again, this is the canonical way that we would like different schools to create their own institutional branches. And I just press return. And if I do my log again, you can see now not only, well, that thing came down and hit it, but you can see that the branch is shown here in green. So the head is at this tag, and it's on this branch. Okay. And if we want to make sure of what branch we're on, we can just type git branch, and it'll show us starred is the institution LAE 32 branch. So that's what we're on. And I'm going to just throw a couple other commands out that are very helpful here. If we want to know what our origin is, where this repo came from, we can type git remote and V for verbose, show me more information. And we can see we just have one remote. It's called origin. It's home git Moodle. That's the file on mitre. What else? Okay, so now checking the remote was kind of me making sure that when I push this thing, I'm pushing it where I think I'm pushing it, because what I've made a branch, but it's not yet pushed to the main repository on mitre. It's just in my local. Does that make sense? Right. So I've cloned the main repository, and I've made a branch in that clone called institution underscore LAE underscore 32. I have not pushed that back to mitre yet, to the origin, the main mitre repo. But I can do that with this command, git push, and U I'm going to add a U flag. Only have to do it the first time you push the thing up. It says use the origin as the upstream for this branch. So when I do a fetch or a pull in here, it knows, look at the branch in the main repo on mitre. That's where you should get stuff from. So git push U. Origin is the name of the repository. And I know this is a lot of stuff, but it's in the sheet. And so don't panic if it's a lot of stuff. Origin, and then the branch name, institution, LAE32. And I didn't type it that fast. It's tab completion. So once you start typing things, you can press tab and it will finish them if it can.
Okay,
all right, so yeah.
Can I just ask, just to make sure I'm understanding this correctly, what you did with the upstream is you're basically telling when you want to get this at a later time that only to grab the changes that you're creating, for everything else go back to where you got it from, go back to your source?
That's not exactly it.
Okay.
I mean, Git basically is only grabbing the changes anyway, but there are lots of branches in the main Git repository. There's this institution branch that I just made. There's Wesleyan branches and Smith branches and Hampshire branches and Reed branches. What we're doing is identifying that this branch, institution LAE32, in this clone should use the branch of the same name in the main repository as its like guide. And we will use this in the course of this tutorial. So you'll get to see the effects of it. So now I just pushed that, and if we do our handy log, you can see there's yet another thing listed here. So it's the head, we're on this tag. Now we see origin, which is the remote, the main mitre repo, institution LAE32, and institution LAE32. This is our local one, this is the origin. And they're in the same place as they should be, because I just pushed. Okay. So, let's see, I wonder if I move this, can I move that? I'm sorry, I'm just trying to set up my screen a little better for myself here. Yeah, this will be better. Give myself a little more room. Okay, so I'm gonna press Q, get out of that log view. That was just confirming that my push had succeeded as I meant to. And what I wanna do now is hack a file. So I'm gonna hack the enroll flat file lib PHP. I'm using Vim to do this. There's different editors one could use to do it. And what I want to do, this is a hack that I use from elsewhere. It's a little sloppy to just be like doing it this way now, but I'm just going to change something, mainly so that we have something changed. What I want to do is take out a few lines. Oops. So don't worry so much about what this is. The point was more that I wanted to make a hack that I knew wasn't going to like start throwing PHP errors. And also so that we can now try some other commands, like I've just changed a file. If I type git status, it's going to show me, okay, you've modified enroll flat file lib.php. And if I type git diff, it's going to show me exactly what I did. I took out these lines and I added this one. And again, I'm pressing Q there to exit that view. So now I'm going to commit that change. I'm going to use the command this way: git commit AM. A means all, every change I have in there. That's something I usually use. In this case, it's only one file, so theoretically, we didn't have to do that, but it's more of a practice. M means I'm adding a message, a commit message. So I'm just going to add the message flat file now removes only flat file enrollments. This is so that our flat file enrollments don't take out manual enrollments that we've put in. We don't want flat file to clobber those. So I make that commit, and I'm going to do my log command again to see what happened. And looking at this now, you can see, okay, the head is no longer on the tag there, right? The top line is a new commit. It's got the commit message I just typed in. Flat file now removes only flat file enrollments. You can see the branch institution LAE 3.2 in my current repository has that, but you know, we're now ahead of where the tag is, and the branch in the main repository does not have this change yet. Does that make sense to everyone? You'll have to speak because I have your videos off.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. What I need to do now to make this part, like, so that when I decide that I'm completely happy with this, then I can push this to the origin, git push. This time I don't need the U flag. I already know what my upstream is. I'm pushing to origin, and I'm pushing the branch name institution LAE 3.2. And I do my log again, and you can see the change. Now the origin institution LAE 3.2 and the repository that I'm currently in both have this little change I made. Okay. So now you could do all kinds of core hacks as needed this way. I want to show you one of the advantages potentially of our institutions using this repository together. I'm going to do the that log command, but instead of running it on my current branch, which is what it does by default, I'm going to tell it to use a different branch. I'm going to say, let's look at origin Hampshire LAE 3.2. This is going to show us the change history for the Hampshire institutional branch. This is our actual Hampshire branch. And you know, we've got various things in there, adding submodules and some other nice things like that. I'm actually looking for a particular change, which is, I know the hash number for it, but I was going to try to find it. Well, things have changed. I'm going to cheat a little bit, and I just know the hash number for it. So these numbers at the beginning of each line are the hash numbers. And it would take me a while to look through and dig it out. So rather than spend the time doing that, which is totally possible, I'm just going to say, yeah, I know what it is already. It's actually in the in that Google sheet too. So I'm going to copy it from there. And over here, I'm in my institution LAE 3.2 branch, and I'm going to type git cherry pick, and then I'm going to put in the hash abbreviation for the specific change I want from Hampshire's code. So this is the hack that I figured out. When you're looking at the grading interface, we're not using the file conversion Uniconf stuff, but we still want to use PDF markup. So when people go to grading, we don't want them to see the PDF markup automatically. We want them to see the pane that just shows grading. If they want PDF markup, they have to click on it. So this is a little hack that makes the simpler view the default. So I just typed that command, and now I've added that commit from Hampshire, that change set from Hampshire, to this new institution branch that we're making up. And if I type my log command again, we'll see, oh yeah, okay. So our head is now 2 steps away from the tag and 1 step ahead of the origin version of this branch, because I haven't pushed yet. And we're using this hides PDF annotation panel by default commit. And I'm going to push that to origin again. Okay, and I'll do the log again. And we can see, yeah, okay, so now origin and the repo I'm in are both 2 steps ahead of that base that we started from. What I'm trying to do is show you a couple different kinds of changes that you could make to take us a few steps away from the vanilla version. The last thing I want to do, because I know that it's one of the things that people are interested in, is adding a plugin. And especially if you're starting from the base version, you'd have to add all the plugins you want, including things like the block filtered course list. So I have what you need like the Git URL for the repository that you want to add. You can get it by going to GitHub and clone it, getting the address to clone from there, or different places depending on where the repository is. But once you've got it, then, oops, I did something wrong here. Hang on, give me 1 second to correct my stupidity. Oh, let's see. Will that correct it? No. Silly me. I just erased the, how do I, too many windows. All right, I'm going to go to GitHub and get it there because I erased it accidentally. So GitHub, the clamp it block filtered course list, where it says clone or download, I'm going to clone it with the HTTP address. That's usually the one you want to use unless you're contributing code. So I just copied the HTTP address for the filtered course list plugin, and I'm going back into my terminal. Press Q to get out of the log view, and I'm going to type git submodule add, and now I type the URL of the filtered course list, and then I have to tell it what directory to put it in, and that is, I gotta go to, it's blocks filtered course list, but I want to look at my cheat sheet here and make sure I don't do anything wrong. Yeah, blocks filtered course list. Blocks filtered course list. Working with the submodules is a little bit not beginner Git. And unfortunately, it is definitely like something you want if you're going to manage your Moodle with Git. So I'm showing you this. It can get a little confusing, but the help is out there, and these instructions are here. Hopefully that helps a little bit. If we now look at, I'm going to change directory into blocks filtered course list. And I'm going to do the, well, conceptually, this is tricky because what we've just done is we've put a Git repository inside a Git repository. the big Git repository, the container, is a Moodle, and the little one is a plugin. And we've done it using a submodule so that the big one knows about the little one and which commit it's on. If we go into the directory, the filtered course list directory, and we use that log command, we'll see, oh, this is not what we were looking at before. This is not Moodle branches and institution branches. These are just branches of the filtered course list. And in order that you can see what plugin updating looks like, even though I've got the code here for the filtered course list, you can see I can easily change which commit I'm on. I've gone into the filtered course list directory, and I'm going to check out an older version of it. So I'm going to check out version 3.0.0. And if I do the log command, you can see, yep, my head is now at 3.0.0. There's things above me, later commits, that I don't see when I look at the log this way. But I could still do something like this, git log, and I'm going to ask it to show me the master branch so that you can see, yeah, master's all the way up here. I've just checked out an old version, so the head is on this commit. I've done this all before running the installation on in the web. So I'm going to jump over to the web now and click on Site Administration and Notifications, and it should say, oh, you've got a plugin that needs to be installed, right? Filtered course list. Yep, needs to be installed. We'll say Upgrade Moodle Database. So it's important that I checked out the version of the code that I wanted before running the installation. You may know that if you've got a later version of something installed, it's hard to install an earlier version. But you can freely move around in the code before running the installation. And then when you're on the version you want, you run the installation. Okay, so now let's go back to the code, go back to the terminal. We went down inside the filtered course list. We checked out the version we wanted. We installed it. Let's go back up to the Moodle level, up to directories. So you can see now we're in the institution LAE 3.2 level. And if I do git status at this point, you'll see that it says, hey, there's a new file here called git modules. That's because I added a submodule. That file gets added at that point. There's a new file in the blocks filtered course list directory, and I've even made a few changes to it since I put it in. And I can just say git commit am and put in my message. I'm going to say adds submodule filtered course list. And if I look at the log, as we've been doing, we can see, oh, that's just another step now. Add submodule filtered course list, and we're one step ahead of the origin. So I'm going to do git push origin institution LAE 3.2 and look at the log, and we can see, okay, the main repository is now caught up with our installation here. So we've made 3 changes from the base, and let's try something kind of fun now in terms of managing multiple instances. I'm quitting that log. I'm going to go back up to my home directory. I don't really think I need to do this, but this is how I like to do it when I'm running Drift. And I'm going to say drift. Let's just type drift to remind ourselves of the options. Okay, drift. And instead of picking a tag, I'm going to say branch equals institution LAE 32. This is the new branch that we've made and built. And this time I'm going to include the submodules flag because our branch has submodules, and this will just tell it to do everything with the submodules that we need to do. And I'm going to call it institution LAE. It can't be the same because you can't have identical folder names. And I'll call this clone. So it's going to be the same branch. It's going to be in a different folder. And again, that's going to take a minute or two to run, but I'm sure by now some of you may have questions. So while that's running, let me pause and hear from you. Questions?
So just to recap what you've done so far, you've created your own repository, your own Moodle of the base code.
Mm-hmm.
And then you made some changes and created another instance of that, or another right now directory.
Yep.
Okay.
It's in the process of installing, and if we had more time, we could go in and look and confirm that it had all of the modifications that we want. It will. But we want the two of them because I'm going to show you a little bit about pushing, you change one of them, push the changes back to origin, you go into the other one and you can pull the changes. And that's sort of the process. Like that's what we're getting to is if you're managing Git and you want to be able to do things in mitre or on a test, you can do your work there, push it, and then go into production, pull it, and off you go. So that installation is complete now. Was there another question before I go back to that?
Yeah, so I'm just trying to think. Can you tell me a little bit about mitre? What was done before we showed up? Mitre is a full working Moodle, or has several Moodles all on a development server, and you're able to just do those changes and push it out, and you've already got a database set up, and you've already got all of the background information set up?
Those are great questions. Mitre is just the name of a server. It's just a Linux server. It happens to have some special things on it. In particular, it has this drift utility, which is written by clamp people. So drift does things like automatically install Moodle for you, including setting up a database, potentially adding users, setting up the data directory. It's a short, easy tool that wouldn't normally be on a server.
Yeah, okay, I understand.
Yeah. And for our purposes here, there's, I think, two reasons why it's really helpful. One is, well, it lets us gloss over some things that deserve a day of their own, like installation. And installation is tough too, because people might be using a different operating system, a different database, a different PHP version. It's hard. It's much harder. If we start talking about installation, there's going to be a lot of institutional differences. Drift is letting us gloss over that installation process, but it's also a great tool. So if you've got your institutional branch on mitre and there's a problem and you want to troubleshoot it, you can go to mitre and spin up your institutional branch and play and, make some courses. You can do what you got to do. if you want to test out some plugins, you can go to mitre, put in your institutional branch, add a plugin, see what it does, see if it does what you want. You may have other infrastructure at your institution to do that on a test server. But sometimes, you don't want to mess up the test server either. And it's really nice to have what you could think of as basically disposable Moodle instances. You can make these in a snap and you can throw them out when you're done, or keep them around if you're actually going to continue to use them.
Okay, so that's what makes all of this monkey business useful or worthwhile, is because you can do that so quickly and easily. It's not something that I could do on, by using Git on my own server.
Right. So there's a little bit of a combination of things going on. There's the drift part, which is unique to mitre, but all of the Git things that I'm doing are general Git tools.
Mm-hmm.
And
Okay.
even without mitre, I do think there's some value to Git, and we'll see in a minute when we want to do some upgrades why that's so. Right. So the thing is, now we've got these two instances. We've got LAE. If we look at the Moodles folder that I made, I'm going to cd into Moodles and look at the directory listing. You can see there's institution LAE32 and institution LAE32 clone. So let's go back into the first one we made, and say we want to upgrade the filtered course list. We can go into, I had some other things in here too, but yeah, okay, let's do something else. Let me follow my plan. We'll be there in a second. Let's do our log. So everything looks as we expect. We're 3 steps away from our original starting point. But let's say, we put this hack in here, this flat file thing, and we decided we don't want it. So I'm going to copy the hash for that and get out of the log view, and I can type a command like git revert, and I can type the hash in. I could also type, and what I have in the notes is head circumflex. That means 2 steps below the head. Either way is going to work. This is the commit message it wants. I agree to that. And interestingly now, if we look at that log, what we'll see, it didn't like push us back, but it tells us we reverted the flat file change. So that flat file change is out of our mix now. Cool. Let's go into the filtered course list, and let's look at the full list of commits again from master. So this is the log command, but we want it to show us master, and we can see, oh, there's a later tag here. We actually want to use this one, so I'm going to copy that tag, and I'm going to say git checkout and use that tag. And if I do the log command, you should see, oh yeah, we're not on 3.0 anymore. The head is now at 3.1. I'm going to skip running these installations in the browser just because it doesn't matter for the code. If I go back up to the main Moodle directory and I do a git status, we should see, yep, there's been some changes that we need to commit. We've updated, we already committed the, yep, the revert gets committed automatically, so that's why that's not showing it here. But we've changed our plugin version. And that, not only did we do that in the directory, but when we go back up to Moodle, remember I said the big project knows what commit the little project is on. So when we go back up to Moodle and we do the git status, it says, you've modified blocks filtered course list. And so I'm going to commit that now with a message like this, updates filtered course list. And it could be handy to put in the version 3.10. So now if we look at the log of the big project, we've done two things that we didn't push back to origin yet. We've reverted an earlier change. That was easy to do. We've updated the plugin. That was pretty easy to do. We like this, so git push origin institution LAE32. Now, this is in the original folder. I'm going to go up a directory to my main Moodles folder. I'm going to go down into the clone. If I do the log command here, we don't have those changes yet. We didn't pull anything yet. If I do git fetch all prune, this is the way I like to run this command. You don't strictly have to add that all and that prune, but I like to make sure that I'm getting changes for all the branches and that I'm deleting branches that have been deleted, like working branches and stuff. I don't want clutter. So this is why I run the command this way, and it pretty much is what I do all the time. So now, if we run this command this way, the log command, we'll run it on the version of the branch in origin, not our local one, so that we can see a little bit more. You'll see here's where origin is, because we pushed that from the other one, remember? And here's where we still are. So just fetching everything didn't update anything yet. There are shortcuts that will do the fetch and the update together. I like to do them separate because I like to get the newest information, look at where things stand, and then I'm going to run git pull, and it's going to bring in the new changes with a catch. With submodules, it does not actually change the commit of the submodule. It knows that the submodule should be on a different commit, but it doesn't do it until you say git submodule update. And then it'll commit out, it'll check out the new commit number. And if we do git status, we should be all clean. There's nothing different in the working directory. And if we do the log command, we should see, yep, we're at the same place where the origin is. So we've just, updated a plugin, reverted a hack, pushed it to the main repo, pulled it into another instance. These instances happen, in this case, both to be on mitre. They could be on your own servers. You can make a remote repository to mitre and pull your code from there. So that covers quite a lot. The last thing I want to do, I know we've been here about an hour. Is everybody okay staying for like another 10? Yeah? Okay. So we've done all this stuff. That's cool. Now we're going along and there's a new LAE release. How does it work? We can stay in the clone branch. We could go back in the clone installation. We could go back to the original installation. Doesn't matter. All these things are equal. But what we want to do, first of all, I'm going to run this log command. Again, I'm running this in lots of different ways. They're all in the document, so you can recover them that way. What I want to do is I want to look at the origin, and I want to look at the LAE in particular. So I'm going to look at LAE 3.2 stable. That's what the branch is called, where this base LAE without the plugins pre-packaged, that's the name of that branch. If I look at the log for that branch, I can see what the latest tag is. The latest tag is V232. Okay, right there. I'm going to copy that. We know, but I'll look again. I'll just look at my own branch here, and we can see, well, this branch was not based off 232. It's off I'm sorry, 323, it's off 321. So what do we do to update? It's shockingly simple. You just type git merge and then the tag name. It's going to register as its own commit, but it pre-builds the commit message, and we'll just use what it provided. It gives us some information about what it changed. And if I do the log command again, we'll see that our branch, institution LAE32, is now a step ahead of V323, LAE 1202, not 1200 base. And it's hard to look at this. There's like too much to look at here. But I'm going to show you one more version of this log command that, so like, we just took all the new LAE stuff and added it into our stuff, but kept our stuff, right? Which is sort of the goal, right? You can upgrade now. I should say something could go wrong. Like you could have a conflict. You may have changed a file yourself that was then changed in the main LAE branch, potentially because Moodle Core changed it. And when you try to run that merge, you'll get a conflict. I'm not going to try to show you how to solve a conflict today. So this is like, today is about how good can it be, and not like, what do I do when there's a problem? Problems can happen. The other thing is that even if there's not a merge conflict where there's files colliding, it could be that your code change somewhere is no longer relevant, like it references something that doesn't work that way anymore. So you still have to test everything and make sure it works. But basically, you know, you've got your idiosyncratic version of Moodle and you just upgraded it. And it was that clean. And if we do try to keep things simple, I think I've got like 8 core hacks. Keeping things simple makes it easier when it comes to this point. But basically, there we are. You know, we did it. Now, if we want to look at what's different between us and Moodle, I'm going to show you a nice little command, a version of the log command. We can put in the log command this way. I thought I had it in here. I'm just trying to make sure I put it in the sheet too.
Kevin.
Yeah.
So when you do merge, it's done.
Yeah.
You don't have to push anything or pull anything. It's just you just did it with merge.
Yes, it could do that because the LAE code is all there. It's in the LAE 3.2 stable branch. That's where the tag is.
Okay.
And because it's all one shared repository, even though it's a different branch, it knows how to find that tag. And it is pulling all those changes that are part of that tag and combining them with what you've got. But it's smart enough to know, well, you are already at 3.0, so these are the changes that it needs to catch up on.
Okay.
Yeah. Sometimes you want to then be able to see what's different between that tag and where I am. So head means where my code is in my own repository. So this command is do that log for me, the 1-line log with the graphing and all that, and show me just the difference between this latest LAE and my head. And if we look at that, we'll see very neatly here just the list of the changes that we have made. If you look at them in the big log, those changes we made them against a much older version of the LAE, so they're way down the list. But when you run the command that way, it sifts it out and it says, yeah, this is what's different between the latest LAE and what you've got. And then you could make further modifications if you wanted to, make other changes, do whatever you need. And when you're feeling good about it, git push origin institution LAE 3.2. And then you could go into your other installations, pull it. Again, I'm skipping the browser upgrades. There's also a command line way to do the upgrades. Browser upgrades are sometimes more helpful because they alert you to new settings and things like that that you don't see in the command line upgrades. But point is, you do have to also do these upgrades. I'm skipping those. We're just pushing the code around. But that new version, the upgrade, would then be available. And this is exactly what I do, with our Hampshire branches. The upgrades come out. I merge in the new tag, check it out on a test. Everything's good. I push my New Hampshire branch and go to my servers and pull it down. That's pretty much it, except for tearing things down. If you want to tear things down, there's.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes, of course.
So I know you said you weren't going to talk about installation, and
I'll try to answer questions.
I will try not to pull you in there.
Yeah.
But as I understand it now, with Git, basically what I would need from my server admin is to set up basically the server itself with the OS, and then I would manage everything else through Git. Is that, so he wouldn't have to do the Moodle install. I would do it all through Git. Is that?
That's not correct.
Okay. Okay.
What Git will do for you is manage the files.
Okay.
That you have as part of your installation. Git alone does not set up a database.
Okay.
We did that with Drift.
Okay.
Drift is not available generally.
Okay.
Drift is on mitre, and it's just a tool for clamp.
Okay.
And honestly, the way Drift sets things up may not be the way your sysadmins want it.
Sure. Okay.
You still need to set up the database. You still need to set up the data directory.
Okay.
You need to set up your config file. The config file contains database user, database password. This is information that you never want to commit to Git. So the config file is actually not covered by Git. And when you grab Moodle by cloning Git, you don't get a config file. You get a config-dist.php file, which is basically, like a genericized version of a config file. When you run the installation in a browser and you fill in things like database name, database user password, the installation process will take that information and write a config.php file for you.
Okay.
But one of the things you can do with Git is you can specify files not to track, and the config file is not tracked. Yeah.
Okay.
So there's a number of things, and then if there's like HTTPS, if there's authentication things with LDAP, Shibboleth, CAS, those things still need to happen outside of Git. Git is just the files.
Okay.
But I think it's a nice way to have oversight of the files, to be able to make changes in one place and have the same changes in another. I don't know what your process is now, and it may be that if you're not using Git, you just try to avoid having any hacks or things like that, because it feels too hard to keep straight. But Git would hopefully help with that and help with things like upgrades. You saw how easy it was to grab
Sure.
the new code.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But what we could do is, because right now my workflow when we need to do an upgrade is I'm basically sending a huge direction sheet to my admin and saying to them, okay, make sure you grab the config file. Here's what you have to do. Grab these plugins back in and reinstall each of those plugins. I could simplify that whole process and say, go to this Git URL or pull from this branch, and this is everything. And all you need to do is just remember the config file.
Yeah, I mean, the config file, if the config file is already there, like if you've already installed Moodle, you can just upgrade. The config file won't be affected by anything that you do. So I don't have to, I have to make the config file for the first installation, but then for upgrades where I'm just pulling new code, it completely ignores the config file. It leaves it exactly how I put it. And I can just grab the new code. I do have to hit the upgrade step in the browser, where it's going to like upgrade the database and give you the list of success, hopefully, right? But there's not, I mean, you should just be able to say, if you have the ability to like go and upgrade some plugins and record those changes with Git and push them to a repository somewhere that the sysadmin can pull from, you can make those changes. You can apply an LAE change, and then you can tell a sysadmin, yeah, pull from this branch or pull this tag and update the submodules, because it doesn't do that automatically. After you pull, you have to say git submodule update, and then you run the installation in the browser and you should be done.
Yeah. We've been avoiding doing anything that's really any hacky. We've just been doing plugins on basically vanilla installations. But I've been looking at things like the Moodle Rooms plugins that you need to make some changes for, and managing through Git would allow me to do that, because then I could just push it.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And I would start small. If you're going to start doing this, play on mitre some. Like, try to go through the steps we've gone through today for yourself, and get comfortable with the concepts. It takes a little while for it all to sink in, especially because the repositories inside repositories thing is a little tricky. But try it
Question
out.
about that real quick.
Yeah.
So when you run the submodule update, if you have more than one, it updates all of them, right? So
it does. You can actually, so all the things that I'm showing you have a lot of variants. The commands have a lot of different flags. You can look online. There's tons of stuff. You can use the command line itself. You type, git help submodule, and it'll show you different forms of the command and what they do. Sometimes those help files are a little hard to read. They have their own kind of, it's a text type of its own. You can get comfortable with it, but it takes some time. Looking online can be easier sometimes. Bottom line, you can certainly update one submodule at a time. That's possible. You can type git submodule update, and then the path blocks filtered course list, and it would just do that one. Yeah. Other questions? Okay, so
the final thing, who did I have to talk to get access to mitre? You gave me the name earlier.
Daniel Landau.
Okay, thank you very much.
You should be able to Slack him. He's in Slack, so you can send him a Slack message and ask him to set you up so you can do SSH to mitre. So last thing I want to show you, I'm going to go back to my home directory to do this. The counterpart of drift is a command called shatter. If I do shatter institution LAE 32, it's going to tear down the main folder. It's going to take out the data folder, and it's going to remove the database. And I'm going to do that with both of the things that I set up because they're not real. They were just for goofing around. I don't necessarily throw out everything that I use. You saw in my Moodles directory, I had a bunch of LAE things. Those are things I use when I'm doing integration. You could have one of your institutional things that you leave set up. If you play around, it's good to break things down at the end. So I'll do the other one, but I'll do that offline if you guys are all set. Sound good?
Thanks very much.
Yeah, my pleasure. Take care.
Thank you.
Yep. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.